are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on
been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
Your mic was off?
Yeah, it wasn't connected to the new thing. All right, guys, this is we're doing the debate coverage today. Welcome to the show. If you're watching this after, we're doing it live right now. Any and all opinions expressed today, and it's important that we say this today, are not held by Micah 6'8" and are not being expressed by Micah 6'8". They are Jackson and I's personal opinions, and we will not be endorsing any politicians. We're just trying to give you the facts live and comparing it to what Louisiana and how it affects your day-to-day life.
Deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well.
That is true.
But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say
really
they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you.
If they're talking about immigration policy, Biden's policy was almost identical to Trump's policy
you were able to kill
on immigration.
Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short.
Especially within like the last few
I'm
years.
really voting that
So
we need more than 6
kind of like a
weeks. But then
non-argument.
the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support.
It's
the
also
6-week ban.
racist sentiment.
Vice President
That's
Harris
not
says
nothing
that
he
women
said was
shouldn't
true, by
trust
the
you
way.
on the issue of
Yeah,
abortion
we're
because
not
you
defending
changed
those
your
policies,
position
just
so many
saying that
times.
both
Therefore,
parties have
why
similar
shouldn't we trust
policy.
you?
The reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by
I
the
don't
way,
think
for our
he's gonna
country,
be able to
because he
run
is
on this, 'cause
really
no
out of
one
it. But
thinks
her
this
vice
about
presidential
abortion.
pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby.
I think that's also known as like murder, which is illegal.
That is not true.
But what I did is something.
That is not
for
true.
52
Yeah,
years they've been trying
that
to
is
get
literally-
Roe v.
he's
Wade
describing
into
murder
the states. And
whenever he
through
says
the,
post-birth. Like, that's
genius
not allowed
and
ever.
heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very
Bro's comparing
important.
himself to
But
Reagan.
we were able to get it.
Yeah, he did a little key jingle there.
On it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now,
That's also not
Ohio,
true.
the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage.
This
to do it.
argument
And the Supreme
on its
Court
face
had
only
great
works
courage
if
in
you
doing it.
like assume
And I
that
give
entire
tremendous
states are
credit to those
homogenous
6
in their like
justices.
There is
opinions,
no state in this country
which
where
is not true even slightly.
The lady just said there's no. She's like, by the way, there's no state where it's legal where you can kill a baby.
That's actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the
Yes.
intention that they would
Yes.
undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
Okay, this is
And they did
a Kamala
exactly
W
as he
no
intended.
endorsement.
And now in over 20 states, there are Trump
Not
abortion
endorsing her,
bans,
but
which make it
Kamala.
criminal.
For the
a
Democratic
doctor
Party, this
or
is the right
nurse
thing to
provide
say.
health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to the
Even
my
most
God.
of the
does not
curated
have the right to make a
exceptions are
decision about
non-actionable
what
because
happens to their body
the
next.
time
That is
between,
immoral.
the rape and the
one does
incest
not have to
and
abandon
the
their
prosecution
faith
happening,
or deeply
permitting
held
the
beliefs to agree that
abortion to happen,
government
it
and
would have
Donald
already, the baby
Trump
would have already been
certainly should
born.
not be telling a woman what to do with
Oh, we're
her
having a
body.
femininomenon
I have
right
talked
now.
with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry
I'm lived
pregnancy
up.
to term, suffering from
I'm
a
lived up
miscarriage,
right now.
being denied care in
I
an
know.
emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might
That's
go
how
to
I felt
jail,
going into
and
this
she's
debate. I'm either
bleeding
gonna
in a
come
car
out
in a
feeling so
parking lot.
fucking
She didn't
freaking
want
lived
that.
up,
Her
or
husband
Turn
didn't
it down a
want
little bit
that.
more. I keep
A
having
12
to
or
tweak your volume.
13-year-old
All right, there you
survivor
go.
of
You're good.
incest being forced to carry a pregnancy
coming out of
to
this debate, I'm
term.
like, I'm either gonna be
They don't
super
want
lived up
that.
coming out, or like
And
super
I
upset.
pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
Yeah,
But
she's doing way better than
understand,
Brandon.
If Donald Trump were to be
Yeah, this is
reelected,
a
he will sign a national
exceptional
abortion ban.
improvement.
Understand, in his Project 2025,
Trump
there
is
will be
also-
a
It also
helps that she
national
keeps her mouth
abortion
closed when she's not
monitor
talking.
that would be
Trump is
monitoring
very-
your
also, like, super
pregnancies, your
unpopular
miscarriages.
right
I
now.
think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states
Bro
are
cannot say
voting.
one honest
And it may
thing
take
in
a
a
little
debate.
time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie.
He looks
And
like
as
he's
far as
getting
the
mad.
abortion ban, no. I'm not in favor of abortion ban,
guests, come
but
on
it doesn't
in.
matter.
Sit in.
Because this issue
We're
has
live
now
right
been
now.
taken over by the states.
The Myrick's
Would you
here.
veto a
Ladies and
national
gentlemen, this is
abortion ban?
Demyrick
Well, I won't have
Guillory.
to because, again, and two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote.
Here,
It's
do you want-
impossible for her
I'm
to
gonna
get the
listen to
vote.
it, though. I didn't think about
Especially
that.
now with the 50-50.
Maybe, like, here, put it on your phone
Essentially
and put
50-50
your
in
butt in.
both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the
Do you
vote.
wanna get a chair from
she
the
can't get the
kitchen?
vote. She won't even come close
From
to
the
it. So it's
the
just talk.
kitchen?
You know what it
Chicken?
reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went
I'm
out,
watching it
got
on,
rejected again by the Supreme
what am I-
Court.
ABC
So all these
right now,
students
or
got
what am I streaming from?
taunted
NBC
with this
News?
whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and
You can
millions of
try
people
sitting
that
closer
had
so
to
you can
pay
get in
off their
frame.
student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they
right.
talk about abortion.
Folks,
But if I
Demyrick,
could just
all
get a
opinions
yes or no,
expressed today
because
by
your running
Demyrick
mate,
Guillory are not
J.D.
affiliated with
Vance,
Micah
has
6-8
said that
mission.
you would
Same
veto
as me
it
and
if it did
Jackson.
come to your
We will
desk.
not
Well,
be.
I didn't
We do not
discuss it
endorse.
with, JD,
There is
in
no
all fairness,
endorsement of
JD,
politicians. We will be giving
and
you
I
the
don't
facts
mind if he has a certain
as it
view,
is
but I
related
think
to
he's speaking for me,
Louisiana
but
and
I really
in
didn't.
general.
Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion.
I wonder if they're gonna talk
That
about
is not
environmental
happening. It's
stuff.
insulting to the women of America. And
I would sure hope
understand
so.
what has been happening under Donald
kind of what
Trump's
we're here
abortion
for.
bans. Couples who
Yeah, it's
pray
gotta be. They're talking about abortion right now.
and dream of having a family
Harris is kinda
are being
eating.
denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford
Brady, you might want to
childcare
turn up
as
your
it
gain
is, have to
to
travel to
get
another
DeMarc
state,
too, yeah.
to get on a plane
he hasn't
sitting next
spoken
to
yet. He hasn't spoken
strangers,
into the mic
to
yet.
go and get the
Oh,
health
okay.
care she needs.
When you talk into
Barely
the mic.
can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is
We're
why
close enough.
in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have
don't
been a
know anything-
leader
I
on
don't know anything about
fertilization,
this.
IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do
That's
that?
the only
Why don't
thing
you
that
ask
he
why-
has.
Why don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question? Would
It's
you
'cause
please
when-
answer
'cause
the
Harris-
question?
Well, he's
Like-
making it's a non-argument because nobody does
No one
that.
does. Yeah,
The
it's like
8th
what?
month, the
No
9th
percent of
month,
abortions
and
happen at
probably
the
after
9th
birth.
month.
Just look
Only,
at the
like,
governor, former
medical
governor of
emergencies.
Virginia.
Yeah, did you
The
hear that? She
governor
was like,
of
by the
Virginia
way-
said, we put the baby
by the way,
aside,
President
and then
Trump,
we
that's not
determine what
happening.
we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border border security. We know it's an issue.
He's losing it a little bit. He's unraveling.
In this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill?
Yeah,
Donald
that's all
Trump got on the
coherent,
phone,
which is
called up
a step up from last time.
and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand.
I need to find out where her hair
the
routine
former
is.
president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of
she does
fixing a
have nice
problem.
hair.
And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight,
No,
even when it's not
we're
the
talking
subject
about
that is being
Kamala's hair is
raised.
nice.
And I'm going to actually do something really unusual.
She probably
and
has,
I'm going to
like,
invite
professional
you
makeup artists.
to
Yeah, she got,
attend
like,
one of
professional
Donald Trump's
stylists and
rallies, 'cause
everything,
it's a
I'm
really
for sure,
interesting thing
but-
to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
like
I'm
to
just
respond.
pointing out.
Pointing out my
that
opinion on
kill
the
that bill, and
performance.
successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in.
That's
and
also
paying
not
them to
true.
be there.
They've been
And then
some of the
showing
highest
them in a
attending
different
rallies
light.
in this
So
whole, like,
she can't talk about that.
Look
People
at her,
go to
presidential
her
race.
rallies. We have the
Wait, she's
biggest
ready.
rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of
ready.
politics. That's because people want
Dude,
to take
that's
their
the second
country
time she's hit
back.
that face.
Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield,
This is not an endorsement of
they're eating
Kamala
the
or a
dogs,
takedown
the
of
people
Trump,
that
but
came
she's
in,
very good at
they're
making
eating
it
the
look like
cats,
she's talking
they're
to a crazy
eating-
person.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And
Okay,
this is what's
yeah,
happening
so-
in our
What is he
country,
talking
and it's a
about?
shame.
There's a new story that came out of, I believe it was Georgia, where Haitian migrants were eating, like stealing people's pets and eating them.
It's a very simple phrase: "Make America great again." She's destroying this country,
So
and
that's
if
what
she
he's talking
becomes
about.
president,
Which
this country doesn't have a chance
the
of
story
success.
that
Not only
came
success,
from was
will end up
not
being
even like remotely
Venezuela
true. It
or
was just a woman
steroids.
having a
Just
medical
want to clarify here,
episode.
you bring up Springfield, Ohio,
We had to
and
do that
ABC News did
yesterday,
reach
too.
out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured,
Dude,
or
they're
abused by
eating-
individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this,
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
Dude,
People on
oh my God, he had a
television
boomer
say my dog was
moment.
taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city
We
manager.
don't even have
I'm
to
not
do the
taking this
fact
from
checking
television.
People
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying the
manager.
dog was eaten by the people
He's
that
like,
went
well, I
there.
don't know. I think I saw that
Again,
on
the
TV.
Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including
That's a cool way of saying Dick Cheney without saying Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney and Congressmember
there we go.
Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general,
looks so
has said
mad.
he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States.
Cooked.
His former national
I
security
bet.
advisor has said
Even
he is
from like a
dangerous and
non-policy
unfit.
perspective, she's
His
just like way
former
more
secretary
composed.
of defense has said the nation, the
Her
republic, would
sentences
never
are
survive
very, like,
another
noticeably more
Trump
coherent.
term.
She's also not
And
like
when
talking,
we
like,
listen
Biden would
to
always
this
talk
kind
about
of
the wrong
rhetoric,
things.
when
he
the
would turn back
issues
around
that
and talk
affect
about,
the
like,
American people are not being addressed, I think the choice
he
is
would just
clear in
start
this
talking
election.
about
President Trump will
stuff
give you a
that did
quick
not
minute to
matter.
respond
Yeah.
here.
Let's see what he says.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad
Oh, God,
things
he's
or bad
relying
job.
on-
I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire
what was that
anybody
show
having to do with
called?
Afghanistan and the
Yeah, that
Taliban and
Trump
the
show.
13 people
The Apprentice.
were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen.
talking about the Afghanistan?
when
Yeah,
somebody
curated
has a
by his
bad job,
administration.
I fire him.
Yeah.
And you take a guy like Esper. He was no
Yeah, that
good. I
was-
fired him. So he writes a
yeah,
book.
Trump's
Another one
policy
writes a
started
book.
that. Biden-
Because
and
with
Biden
me,
just
they
followed
can
through
write
with
books
it.
with nobody else.
Yeah,
can
he
they?
followed
that
the
was when
Trump
Biden-
curated
They have done
plan.
Biden
such
had
a
the
poor
highest
job,
approval rating
and
in his
they
entire
never
presidency
fire
when that
anybody.
happened.
Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have
I think
books
it
written
actually,
about you. But
at
just to finish,
post-Afghanistan
I got
is whenever
more
it,
votes
fell,
than any Republican in
just
history
because
by far.
There was a few casualties.
In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president.
It wasn't a
in
good
history
plan, but
by
it wasn't
far.
his plan.
That was
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have
High approval
no
rating
problem using the
when we
U.S.
first got into
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that
dude,
number
what-
is
why
much
is the
higher.
actual,
Take us through this. What does this
the
look like? Will authorities
mediator,
be
like,
going door to
cooking
door
them?
in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed
Oh, yeah.
common street criminals. They
Well, they're-
allowed people
like, that's,
to
like,
come
the
in,
best
drug
question to
dealers to
ask
come into
him.
our country. And they're now in the United States and
Seeing
told
he's
by
avoiding
their
it.
countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country.
Oh my God.
And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done
I'm
like
excited
this
to see
at
the
all.
re-
They've
after
destroyed the
today.
fabric of our country.
Yeah.
Millions of people let in, and all over the world,
Yeah, the
crime
illegal
is down.
immigrants
all
are
over the world
voting.
except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite
It's
their
not.
fraudulent
It's
statements
not.
that they made.
It's
not. literally
Crime in this
not.
country is
That's
through
not
the
true.
roof.
Crime
And we
is
have a
Like
new
90
crime. It's
especially-
violent crime. And it's
especially
happening
violent
at levels
crime.
that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says
like
overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
Dude,
Vice
it
President
literally
Trump-
Kamala doesn't even have to
They were
respond.
defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include.
They might need to
cities
chill with it
the
though,
worst crime.
because then people are gonna start
They're
thinking that
fraud.
this was
Just
rigged.
like
Yeah, they're
their
gonna think
number
it's
of
rigged.
818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes,
doing
election
the Kamala
interference,
stuff.
has been found liable for sexual assault.
This might be the
and his
one area
next
where it
big
kind of works.
court appearance is in
No, it
November at
does.
his own criminal
It's super
sentencing.
libby.
Like other times
And let's
she
be
acts like a
clear
cop, it's cringe. But
where
when she
each
does
person
it in,
stands
When she does it to,
on the issue
Trump,
of
a
what is
felon,
important
yeah.
about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries.
I feel like it's going
frankly,
down.
the American people are exhausted.
Well, when half of the
with this
still
same
half of the
tired
base
playbook.
would literally like
President
die
Harris,
for
thank
him
you.
though,
Excuse me.
so that like they don't
Every
have
one of
any
those
choices.
cases was started by them against
Like,
the
they have to
political
wait for him to
opponent,
choose
and
to
I'm
step
winning
out,
most of
or
them, and
he
I'm
has
gonna
to,
win the
like-
rest on appeal.
Yeah.
And you saw that with the
Mm,
decision
yeah,
that came
I'm-
down just recently.
Well, yeah,
from the
no,
Supreme
for this
Court.
election
I'm
cycle
winning
for
most of
sure.
them. But those are cases.
Post-Trump
it's called
is going to be like a
weaponization.
major
Never
reconstruction
happened in
period
this
for the
country.
conservatives.
They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case?
but
They
this
said,
isn't
oh,
Joe
that's the
Biden,
toughest of
no.
them all. A complete and total victory.
Do you think
2
that he
months ago,
forgot
it
that he
was
wasn't
fraud.
debating Biden for a second
It's
there?
weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're
President Trump-
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this
I
is
think
someone who has
Republicans
openly
just gave too
said
much
he
ammo
would terminate,
this
I'm quoting,
cycle.
terminate the Constitution of the
Well,
United States.
they weren't-
That he would
it's
weaponize
because,
the Department of Justice
like,
against his
the person that they were
political
anticipating
enemies.
to fight against would
Someone
not
who
have
has
used that ammo.
openly expressed
true. Biden would not have
disdain
said that. He would have talked
for
about something
members
stupid
of
like
our
his son or
military.
something.
Understand.
He would have talked
would
about
it be if
NATO.
Donald
Oh,
Trump
yeah,
were
NATO.
back
I
in
made
the White
NATO.
House With no guardrails.
Yeah, I did
because
NATO.
certainly
Shut
we
up,
know
dude.
now
No
the
one
court
cares.
won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run
I'm
for
ready for them to
president,
get on to environmental.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized.
No,
I
well,
probably
no,
took a
because they
bullet
have
to the head
probably scarily
because
similar
of
positions
the
on
things that they say
Palestine,
about me.
Palestine.
They talk
They
about
probably will.
democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia
Bi- or
investigation.
We do a lot
Harris
to
is
get-
just going to
went
do
nowhere.
We have a
Biden,
lot to
Biden's
get to.
exact
Lindsay?
same
Vice
stance
President Harris,
on
in your last
Palestine.
run for president, you said you
But
wanted to ban
environmental
fracking.
issues,
Now you
which is what
don't.
we do
You wanted
here,
mandatory
I think
government
that
buyback
they're
programs
gonna
for
do a lot
assault
on that
weapons.
because
Now
Biden
your
did the Inflation
campaign
Reduction
says
Act,
you
which was
don't.
kinda
You supported
poggers. I'm not gonna say
decriminalizing
that,
border
which was kinda
crossings.
cool.
Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say
that
that
just
your
slipped. That was a
values have
Freudian
not
slip.
changed. So then why
It
have
was
so many of your
nice,
policy
and
positions
they have been
changed?
very, very
So
pro-climate.
my
which is
values
what
have
we
not
need.
changed, and I'm
Well,
going
as
to
much as
discuss every
we've seen.
one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania.
No.
I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I
Why
have
do I
not
have
banned
to say
fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for
All right.
fracking.
My
My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources
just
of
doing this
energy
to
so
win
we reduce our
Pennsylvania. It's
reliance
so-
on foreign
Oh
oil.
my
We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on
maybe not
foreign
right
oil.
now.
As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our
that's not even
first
an
home when I
opinion.
was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to
The most
say we are
important
going
swing
to
state.
work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term.
I mean, I guess if that's
my
what you
work
gotta do.
that is related to
If it
having
like,
a friend when I
I
was in
mean,
high
it's just
school
a
who was sexually
consequence of
assaulted by
us
her
getting closer to the
stepfather.
election. They're going to
And my
become,
focus then
both of them are
on
going to
protecting
become a
women
little
and
bit more
children from violent
centrist.
crime is
Centrist
based on a
takes.
value that is deeply grounded in the
I think they're gonna
importance
do a home
of
soon.
standing
They're gonna
up
do
for
like the
those who are
housing
most
crisis.
vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social
rent, like
Security and
Wendy
Medicare
said.
is based on long-standing work that I
Yeah,
have
she
done,
did good. Well,
protecting
abortion was hard for
seniors from
Republicans to push back
scams. My
on.
values have not changed.
and it also- the
And what is
majority of
important
Americans
is
are,
that there is a president who
pro-choice.
actually brings values and a
it's like
perspective
60%.
that is about lifting people
a-
up
Yeah.
and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people
You
up.
think you fell out of a
I
coconut
intend to
tree?
be that president.
President Trump,
what
your
I
Well, first of all, I
response.
wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens,
Oh, dude, he's
and a
playing to the
great
wrong
father, and
thing.
I learned a
You're
lot
not
from him, but I was
humble.
given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I
There
built
is
it into
no
many,
way.
many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people
He's like,
see it,
"Actually,
they
it
are
was
even
3 million."
surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking? She's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police? She's been against that
Oh, now she's
forever.
just gonna say,
She
"Actually,
gave
Harris
all that
is for
stuff up
against fracking,"
very
which is-
wrongly,
she just
very
said she
horribly,
wasn't.
and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing
think
at it.
I
She
could-
gave
if
up
I got
at
put in
least
charge of a
12 and
campaign, I
probably
would do better
14 or
than, like,
15
both the
different
Democratic
policies. Like,
campaigners and the
she
Republican
was big on
campaigners.
Oh,
defunding
yeah,
the police.
absolutely.
In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Don't lie.
She went out.
Oh my God.
Oh my god, that kind of
She went out.
Does that sound
Minnesota
familiar? Oh my
and wanted
God.
to let
She
criminals
said
that
that
killed
before, and
people,
it took
that
like
burned
40
down
years.
Minneapolis.
Trump gotta paint his
She went
nails
out and
after
raised money
that.
to get him out of jail. She did things that
that
nobody
sound
would ever
familiar?
think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania.
When we
If
talk
she
about
won the
guns,
election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices
Like
were
nobody
going
before,
to
except for the
debrief,
current administration that is
immediately
producing the most
as-
oil of all
If you
time.
take
to where
any
they were.
economics class at
I
any
would have been
level of
5
education,
times,
you will
4
immediately
times,
learn.
5 times higher.
And if
because you're
ask
talking
anyone
about
who
3.5
is in the
years
finance
ago.
field,
They got it up
the
to
president
where
has
I was
almost
because
zero
they had no
effect
choice
on the
because
market.
the prices
The
of
market
energy
moves-
were
this is just
quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to
classic
gasoline.
political
so they said, let's go back
talking
to Trump.
points. They're trying,
But
he's
if
trying
she
to
won the election, the day after
credit
that
for the
election,
economy he had,
they'll
which is
go back
not.
to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to
Non-corollary.
windmills, and we'll
They
go
have,
back
like,
to
slightly different
solar,
fiscal
where they
policy and
need a whole
monetary policy,
desert
but
to
it's,
get
like,
some
not
energy to come
substantial
out. You ever see a
in the
solar plant?
slightest.
By the way, I'm a big
Never
fan of
ever
solar.
listen, even if the
But they
Democrats
take
do it. Never to listen to that shit.
400,
President Trump.
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have
Yeah,
an election in
those
just
stupid
56 days. and I want to talk
libtard
about the
far-left
peaceful
solar
transfer
panels,
of
which I
power,
love.
which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval
Yes,
Office.
I do know how he's
You
gonna-
did send out tweets,
does
but it
the
was
same
more
thing
than
every
2
single time
hours
he
before you
talks
sent
about
out that video
I
message
told them, like,
telling your
told them, get out.
supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You
say
just
yes.
said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. and
I
nobody
honestly
on
think
the
it would
other
kinda be
side
a
was
better idea
killed.
for him just to
Ashley
say,
Babbitt was
I'm
shot by an
sorry.
out-of-control
Like,
police
you're right.
officer that should have never, ever shot her.
But
It's a
then it
disgrace.
would
But
disprove
we didn't do
him,
this group
like,
of people
it would prove that he's
treated so
capable of
badly.
being wrong,
I
and like
ask,
him
what
not
about
being
all the
wrong
people
is a
that are
really
pouring
big
into our
part of
country
his
and killing
like voter
people
base.
that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, "Oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet." That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move
The
forward toward
moderators
another
do
election.
seem like they're kind of going
Is there
after him,
anything
though.
you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there.
That was like a
and on that day,
grabber
the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But
Dude,
this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches.
Well, yeah, because I mean,
spewing anti-Semitic
even a lot of
hate.
conservatives agree that January
And what
6th
did
was
the
very
president
much over
then
the
at
edge.
the time say?
Well, especially
there were
if you're
fine
talking about
people on each
Kopstein,
side.
like that's
Let's
Yeah.
going to be a
remember
moderate Republican.
that when it came to the
They're gonna care
Proud
about
Boys, a
that.
militia,
Even a bunch of liberals will.
the president said, the former
Yeah, even
president
libs
said,
care about
stand
that.
back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers
She
what
had- she
January
must have been
6th
preparing.
was, I say we don't have to go back.
Well, allegedly,
Let's not
she
go
is
back. We're
the
not
only
going
one
back.
on stage
It's
that
time
actually
to
did
turn
any
the
prep.
page. And if that was a
Apparently,
bridge
Trump
too
has
far
been
for you, well, there is a
like
place
depression dodging
in
all of his
our
practice
campaign
and going
for
to
you
golf.
to stand
Dang.
for country,
Yeah, he
to
doesn't look too
stand
good.
for our democracy, to stand for rule of law.
I mean, if I was in his
And to
position,
end
I
the
probably wouldn't feel too
chaos.
great.
And to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like
I mean,
the
I
outcome.
still think it's
and
gonna be a
clear
close
on that.
No,
point.
it will be, of
Donald
course.
Trump,
Which
the
is
candidate,
crazy.
has said in this election there will
MAGA's
be a
big, and
bloodbath.
I also think, and this is
If
my
this
opinion,
and the
I think
outcome of
that
this
there's a
election
lot
is
of
not
like
to his
sexism
liking.
involved too.
Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go
I
back.
think that's why Hillary
Let's
lost.
chart a course.
Yeah,
for
that's
the
certainly why
future
Hillary lost.
and
I
not
think it's
go
been
backwards
mitigated
to the
enough to where
past.
it's not
Let me just
too much
follow
of
up
an
here.
issue.
I hope
It
so.
was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have
you're
destroyed
talking
our
about
energy
energy.
business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border. How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both lead this debate
he just
right
keeps
now.
on
I'd like to see her
latching on to any sort of talking points he has, because they weren't even talking about the border.
Because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C., and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the border.
He's spending way too much time on Biden.
If they do that, the border is closed. Those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to
a scary amount.
This next issue to both of you, because it really
like a
brings
frighteningly
us,
high amount.
Truth, in these times
many of
that
which
we're
are
living
not in border
Mr.
states.
President, for 3.5
you
years
have to
after
believe that the
you
people
lost
that
the
come over the
2020
border are
election, you
actually
repeatedly
gangers, which they're
falsely
not.
claimed that you won. Many times
look,
saying
Brady,
you won in a landslide.
especially like in the
past
Midwest,
couple of weeks leading up to
it's
this debate,
a
you
lot
have
of
said,
people
quote, "You lost by a
believe that
whisker,
stuff
that you
because they
didn't
aren't
quite
like
make it, that you
exposed
came up a
to
little bit
like the
short."
reality of the situation.
Are you now acknowledging that you lost
someone
in
who's running for the
2020?
president?
Acknowledge
Okay,
it at all. I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
Never
You
mind.
know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders.
Dude, no
We have walls.
He's
He's
on
on
that-
the ticket.
He's on that
Our elections
2016
are
type
bad.
beat.
And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people
my
are trying to
God,
get
that is-
them to
okay,
vote.
this is
And that's
factual.
why
That
they're
was just
allowing them to
racist.
come into our
That
country.
is
I
so
did watch all of
racist.
these pieces of video. I
That
didn't
is
detect the
so
sarcasm.
racist.
Don't even
Lost
know
by a
what
whisker. We
language
didn't
this
quite make
speak.
it.
He said they
probably
And
don't
we should
even
just
know where
point out
they
here as
are,
clarification,
stupid
and you know
idiot.
this. You and your allies, 60 cases
my
in front of many judges, many of them
No judge
Republicans.
They might not know where they are because they got bused to a completely foreign
Yeah, maybe it's because they got
area
smuggled
by
in.
Greg Abbott.
Can you
No.
imagine a
I'm talking
system
about how
where
I'm talking-
a person
Greg
who
Abbott
doesn't
bust
have
a
standing,
bunch
the
of
president
immigrants
of the
that were
United
told they were
States
seeking or
doesn't have
getting
standing.
asylum. They
That's
brought
how we lost.
he brought a
If you
bunch
look
of
at the
them
facts
to
of it, you'll do a special
some
on
rich
it.
neighborhood
I'll
in
show you Georgia,
DC, I
and
think
I'll
it
show
was
you Wisconsin, and I'll
Mary's
show you
Margaret's Garden or
Pennsylvania,
some
and I'll
shit
show
like that.
We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have
Martha's
right now.
Vineyard.
That's old
It was
news.
Martha's
And
Vineyard
the
that
problem
they
we have
bust a
right now
bunch
is
of
we have a nation
asylum
in
seekers from
decline,
Texas
and they have put it
to
into decline.
Martha's Vineyard
We have a
with
nation
no
that is
plan.
dying, David.
Mr. President,
They just
thank
did
you.
it out of
Vice
spite.
President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was
Yeah,
a
I
post
also
from
don't think most
President
people think the
Trump
election is rigged.
about this upcoming election
that's a
just weeks
majority
away.
of
He
the
said,
vote.
when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters,
I
election
live with
officials,
one.
he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that.
Oh my God.
But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States
Dude,
who
I hate American
attempts,
politics
as he
so
did in the
much.
past, to
Yeah.
upend the will of
I hate
the
that
voters
it's like
in a
mic
free and
drops.
fair
It's not just
election.
like it's not
And I'm gonna
actually
tell
caring
you
about
Vibes
that-
it.
based, no
I have
policy
traveled
really
the world as
matters.
Vice President of the United States.
Is
I
she
mean-
owning
And
him right
world
now?
leaders
yeah,
are laughing at
American
Donald
politics
Trump.
has come down to is she
I
owning
have talked
him.
with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a
Harris
disgrace.
sound real good till she start talking
And
about
when you
Gaza.
then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny
My presidential candidate
what
be so
over and over
fine, then
again are
boom,
court
Middle
cases
East
you have
policy.
lost
Middle Eastern policy.
because you did in fact lose that election.
I don't care.
It leads
I
one
don't
to
care. I don't
believe
care. I don't
that
care.
perhaps
I don't
we
care
do not
that,
have
about the
in
last
the
election.
candidate
I'm
to my
tired
right
of
the
hearing about
temperament
this. Please talk about something
or
important.
the ability to not be confused
This is a
about
bad
fact.
question.
Unfortunately,
That's
it's
deeply
important
troubling, and the
to
American
a
people
lot
deserve
of
better.
voters.
I'll give you 1 minute to
because
respond.
there's still a non-zero
Victor Orban,
amount
one of
of
the most respected men.
fucking
They call him a strong man. He's
people
a
that
tough
live here
person.
that think it was
Smart.
completely
Prime
rigged,
Minister of
which
Hungary.
is
They said, why is the whole
something.
world blowing up? 3 years ago
if
it
you
wasn't.
believe the
Why is
election
it
was
blowing
rigged,
up?
there's no point in
He said
talking to you
because
because
you need
what are you gonna
Trump
show them
back
to,
as
they're not gonna be
president.
happy.
They were afraid
Mm-hmm.
of him. China was afraid,
just
and I
move
don't like to
on.
use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him.
Yeah, Russia
Look at
was
what's going
terrified.
on with
That's why
North
they
Korea, by
spent
the way.
how much
He
money
said
to have,
Russia was afraid of him.
they
I
paid
ended the Nord Stream 2
streamers and
pipeline,
news
and
outlets to
Biden put it
endorse
back
Trump.
on day one, but he ended the
$100,000
XL
per
pipeline.
video.
The
That's why
XL
Russia wants
pipeline
Trump
in our
to be
country, he ended
Yeah,
that.
they
But he
paid
let the
Tenant
Russians build a
Media, I think
pipeline
it was
going
a
all over
collective
Europe and heading into
$4.7
Germany, the
million
biggest
and did
pipeline
not
in the
declare it
world.
properly,
Look,
so it was just
Viktor
straight up
Orban
like covert
said it. He said
payments.
the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her.
I think you
But
just
he
have
got
to know nothing
14
about
million
politics
votes.
to
They
listen
threw him out.
to some of
she
this
got
stuff.
0 votes.
'Cause he's not
And
touching
when
on
she
But that,
ran,
I mean, that
she was the
that is
first one
literally
to
true
leave
though,
because she
because
failed.
presidential
And now
debates
she's running. I don't understand it,
occur
but
near
I'm
the
okay
end of the
with it
election
because
cycle, and
Your
that's
time is up.
whenever
Very well.
low information
Yeah, you
voters
have
tune
to
in.
be
The
under a rock.
Israel-Hamas
Like, well,
war
he's
and the
not talking about
hostages were
anything.
still
Yeah, okay,
being
here we
held,
go.
Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100
Low estimate, by the
hostages
way.
remain.
Yeah, it's a low estimate.
Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Okay, come on.
Well,
come on.
let's
Hopefully
understand how
the
we got
mass
here.
Israeli
On
protests
October
will
7,
change your tune.
Hamas, a terrorist organization,
Wait.
slaughtered
give her a moment.
1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert.
I'm gonna let her
Women
cook
were
before I
horribly raped. And so
consider this over.
absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would.
Okay, now, what are you going to say after it?
And how it does so matters. Because
just to
it is
appeal to
also
what most
true,
people
far
think.
too many innocent
You have
Palestinians
to
have been
condemn
killed.
Hamas first.
Children, mothers.
You said innocent
What we
Palestinians are
know
being killed.
is that
That
this
is a step
war
up.
must end.
Well, obviously,
It
everyone
must
condemns-
end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out.
don't say two-state
And so we
solution.
will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock,
ceasefire's
also
good.
understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will
Neither
assure
party
you
is getting
always,
this one right,
I will
guys.
always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its
I can't wait
proxies
to look back
pose
on
to
this in 10
Israel.
years and see
But we
everyone's
must
opinion
have a
be different
two-state
on it.
solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have
Yeah.
security,
2045
self-determination, and the
famously.
dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you
I mean, it's a very
negotiate with
lib,
Netanyahu
moderate answer.
and also
I mean, it's
Hamas
better-
in order to get
it's
the
gonna be better
hostages
than
out
Trump's
and
answer.
prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
Cohen
If I
would
were
have liked that
president,
answer.
it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years,
By the way.
have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when
She
he went
literally
to Congress
just
to
said
make a
it has a
very important
right to
speech.
defend
She
itself.
refused to be there because she was at
She
a
literally just
sorority
did
party
pro-Israel.
of hers. She wanted to go
She
to the sorority
quite
party.
literally, before he
She
started
hates
talking, said
Israel.
that she wants to
If
pursue
she's
a two-state
president, I
solution.
believe
You gotta hit it
that
with the-
Israel
you gotta
will
hit it
not
with October
exist
7th and
within
hit 'em
2
with that right
years
to
from
defend
now. And I've been
themselves,
pretty
bada
good at
bing, bada
predictions,
bam.
and I hope I'm wrong
That's
about
your
that
liberal
one.
take.
She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to
He's
get
trying to
blown
play
up.
both sides?
Arabs,
What?
Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have
Does he know?
never
Never mind, I'm not gonna say
Iran
that.
was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're
Why
a
does he
rich
keep saying
nation,
it like
and
that?
now what they're doing
Saying
is
it
they're
like-
spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Let's see what the
Vice
moderators
President
say.
Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract
By
from
the
the
way,
reality,
guys,
which is it is
multiple,
very well known that
reputable
Donald Trump
sources
is
are
weak
talking
and wrong
about
on
how
national
what
security
Israel
and
is
foreign
doing
policy.
is
It is
considered a
well known
genocide.
that
It
he
isn't- it is
admires
hardly a debate.
dictators, wants to be a dictator
So
on
this
day
is not
one, according
endorsing
to himself.
any either politician,
It
but the
is
fact that
well
both
known
politicians can
that
sit
he
up here
said of
and
Putin
play and talk like
that
this is
he
crazy.
can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he
Jackson,
said
do you
when
know
Russia went into
the
Ukraine, it
sources
was
that's claiming
brilliant.
genocide?
It is well known he
just
exchanged
tons and tons
love
of human
letters with
rights
Kim
organizations.
Jong-un, and it is
have described
absolutely
it
well
going
known
on similar to what
that
happened
these
in South
dictators
Africa.
Including the
are
International
rooting
Criminal
for
Court.
you to be
Nelson
president
Mandela
again
stuff.
because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that
I'm
is
ready
why
to get onto our Mission 6-8.
so many military
environmentalist
leaders who you
issues.
have
This is where
worked
we'll
with
shine.
have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and
Oh, okay, you're
respecting
like-
in
yeah, we
highest
will do
regard
the
our
aftermath.
military.
Vice
We'll
President
probably see
Harris,
what
thank
happens.
you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the
you should
year,
definitely-
168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it.
Did he say that?
Because what he's got
It was, like,
is absolutely
extremely
incredible.
obviously
It
a
wouldn't have
joke.
happened with me.
Okay.
The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are.
Like, you would
They're
literally
grossly
only believe
incompetent.
that if you
And
didn't
I just
see it
ask
yourself.
One question: why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world, going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right, guys.
The
Should we go
ABC
get some
News
water?
presidential debate will continue
Uh,
after this.
I have some already.
We're gonna, me and Demire are gonna get water. Jackson, be entertaining.
So, the debate has gone pretty well so far, I'd say. Very, he's done a good job of demonstrating what the two-party positions are, clearly. I mean, again, no official endorsements, no official takedowns, but I think Harris's points have been more coherent, a lot less all over the place. I'm just glad it's not two old men arguing over golf this time.
What a great sentence for me to join back into. Anna told me I needed a DeLorean more.
Might need to go grab a snack or something. I haven't even had lunch. I mean, I had dinner.
They normally have like little in-between commentary.
Well, they were usually a lot longer because between cuts, they were allowed to consult with their campaign managers. They were not allowed to this time.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'll be right back.
Okay. Our Brita is literally tap water. Just it literally goes like straight through the filter. So you're just drinking tap water.
Okay, well, as long as it's cold, you know.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm gonna go get one of those little like filter things that you put the 3-gallon jugs on top of. That you can get the filter and you can like. I'm gonna go get one of those.
Okay,
Yeah, they're like the Primo. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Let me show you what I'm talking about. But they're not that expensive actually. Alright, I don't know what Jackson said, but those are the ones in like the offices. That was a Okay, so that was pretty good so far. Yeah, I don't know. They have the NASDAQ and the Dow and the S&P 500 index. It's pretty cool. Oh my goodness. Dude, what is he talking about? Shut up, I don't care.
Hello.
Hopefully they do more clean energy at some point in the debate. If not, that's going to be our prime coverage of
Top
the
story
review,
live
Jackson.
from Paris. Live
How
in
they
Tel
did
Aviv.
not do
We are
clean
here in
energy
Butler,
at all.
Pennsylvania. Every weeknight, it's your news playlist.
As the climate crisis
As the
continues.
climate, yeah, well, like they have to talk about the climate
Top story
crisis.
with Tom Yamas. Streaming weeknights
I really
at
hope
7
it's a
on
big
NBC
part of
News
this
Now.
second half.
Yeah, well,
We're back
Or
with tonight's debate
maybe
between
this isn't a
Kamala
half, I don't
Harris and
know.
Donald Trump.
When it ends in just
Is
a
it
few
3/3?
minutes, join us for
Like
an
3
analysis of
30-minute
tonight's
periods?
key moments. Our
I don't
team will
know.
break
Maybe.
down how
It's
it could
already,
shake up
we're already
the
an hour
final
in.
sprint to election day. For now,
so
though, let's go back to the debate.
Maybe
live
just
in
another 30
Philadelphia.
minutes?
yeah,
That would
maybe
be
just another 30.
Live from the National Constitution Center in
There's the 2
Philadelphia,
hours.
Pennsylvania. Here again.
I thought I heard, yeah, I heard
David
an hour and a
Moore
half.
And Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy,
Wait,
that
what?
it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers.
He was sentences in,
Look,
hasn't laid out his
we're
plan.
in for 250 billion or more because they don't
This
ask
isn't your
Europe,
plan,
which is
Mr.
a
Trump.
much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden
talking
and
too much.
you
They're
don't
pressing
have the
on it.
courage to ask Europe, like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either
He's
you
not
pay
talking
up
about
or
his
we're not
plan.
gonna
He's just
protect you
tearing down
anymore.
the
So that's
Biden
maybe one of the
administration
reasons they
again.
don't like me
Well,
as much
the
as they like
moderator's
weak
probably gonna
people.
say something. He's
But
gonna be like, Mr.
you
Trump,
take
you
a
need
look
to
at what's
answer the
happening.
question.
We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your
says this a lot,
president.
too.
Okay, they
He
respect
kinda
me. They don't
sounds like
respect
now he's
Biden.
like
How
kind
would
of
you
the old
respect
man
him?
of the
Why? For what
election.
reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect. And what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must
going to
be
fix the problem
negotiating.
by
It must
fixing
be a
the
good,
problem.
strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's
again, he's
only
on
getting
Biden.
worse,
You're
and
not
it could
running
lead
against
to
Biden,
World
dude.
War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
They
here,
threw
You're
him out of
criticizing
the
a dude that's in
campaign like
power
a
for
dog.
like
We don't
another
even
2,
know.
like
Is he
what,
our
4 months?
president? But we have a
was kinda
president
funny,
Mr.
though.
President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
That's
your
a good
time is up.
question.
Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the
not
U.S.
seen
best
anything
interest
about him.
for Ukraine to win this war? Yes or no?
I think it's the U.S.
He just
best
came out to
interest
do
get this
something
war
the other
finished
day.
and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate
Stop
a deal
putting life
because
energy
we
into
have
him.
to stop all of these human lives.
He actually looks
from
like
being
he was
destroyed.
doing a
I wanna
lot
take this
better
to
now
Vice
that he's
President
not dealing
Harris. I
with
wanna get your
campaign
thoughts
stress.
on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as commander-in-chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
There we go.
Oh,
I believe the reason
normal
that Donald
response
Trump
that I
says
could have
that
come
this
up
war
with.
would be over within
President
24
I was on
hours is because
stage.
he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here.
Yeah, that's what
I
I would've said,
actually
too, as a
met with
as a
Zelensky
20-year-old
a few days
non-politician.
before
Yeah.
Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery,
But I don't
the
think he has an
javelins,
answer.
the Abrams
No.
tanks that
So I
we
think-
have
I think in
provided,
juxtaposition
Ukraine
to
stands as an
Harris,
independent and
who is
free
just
country.
answering the
If Donald
question,
Trump
even
were
if it's like
president,
a lib,
Putin would be
kinda
sitting in
lib,
Kyiv right
it
now.
doesn't matter 'cause she's, like,
and
answering
understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies
like, comes
are so
across, like,
thankful
that
that
she
you are
really
no
knows what
longer
she's talking about.
president,
That's just me.
and that we understand
That's
the
like a
importance of the
rhetoric thing. I
greatest
don't-
military
I don't think
alliance
that's
the
what
No,
world has
she's
ever known,
she's
which
very
is
good
NATO.
at responding and
And what we
deconstructing
have
what he
done
said.
to
That's just her
preserve
prosecutor
the
coming
ability
out.
of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to
prosecutor in
fight
her.
for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be
Prosecutorial
sitting
instinct.
in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to
I think it
something
was pretty smart of her to get that
please,
heated
I'll give you a
over
minute.
that.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please.
He's so progressive.
He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got
don't
nuclear
ever talk
weapons.
about it.
Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate
saying
peace
He said
before
that
this war
verbal tick
started.
like 4 or 5
3
times
days
now.
later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with
I don't know. I just don't
Zelensky
think
and
he's doing-
Putin.
I don't know if that's biased.
And she
I don't think
did.
he's doing a good
And the war
job.
started 3 days
He's really
later.
not.
And that's the kind of
He did good
talent
against
we have
Biden
with
because
her.
Biden
She's worse than
was
Biden.
like-
In
it's
my
like- it was
opinion, I
like
think he's the
debating a
worst
cardboard
president in the
cutout.
history of our country. She goes
It's
down
just
as the worst vice
of him
president
dealing
in the
with
history
one
of
who
our country.
actually,
But let me
like,
tell you something.
has-
She is a horrible
Be
negotiator.
like,
They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries,
I
the
thought they were
28
doing
countries
muted
at the
mics.
time,
Did they change
to
their
pay
mind?
up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO.
they're letting him talk?
He said, I've never
This is his
seen.
response?
For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came
okay,
up in the
we're
first
moving on.
hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I
think Jackie
agreed with
disconnected.
President Biden's decision to pull out
Hello?
of Afghanistan.
Okay, I can hear.
Four
Can you,
presidents
Yeah, I was
said
having
they
like a
would,
lag
and
spike or
Joe Biden
something.
did.
I heard
And
it.
as a result, America's taxpayers
Honestly,
are
I
not
don't
paying
really
the
wanna hear about
$300
this
million
either.
a day
This is
we were
from
paying
4
for that
years ago.
endless war. And as of
It's just-
today,
I don't think
there
it's-
is not
like, why are we
one
talking about it?
member
It's-
of the
it's already
United
been,
States
like-
military who is in active duty in a combat zone in
Like,
any war zone around the world the
I don't
first
understand
time
why
this
this was such a
century.
big point of
But
contention
let's
between,
understand
like,
how we
parties
got
on the
to where we
Afghanistan
are.
pullout.
Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals
It's just
you can
because
imagine. He
the
calls himself a deal
conservatives are
maker.
using it to
Even
play
his
on
national security
patriotic,
advisor said
Talk about the next
it was a
one.
weak,
Nonsense.
terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization
I'm
called the
putting my sleeping mask
Taliban.
on for this one.
The
Wake me up for the
negotiation
next-
involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world
Yeah,
leaders.
this only works to people
And
who have like friends
this
in the military or like family in the military.
former president, as president,
that's a lot of the
invited
American
them
audience.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
to Camp David
they're like-
because he
yeah.
does not
I mean, this
again
is- they're-
appreciate
she's doing-
the
I think she's
role
doing- she's
and
doing what she's supposed to.
I mean,
responsibility
it's kind of like
of the president of
I
the
think
United States.
even if
to
we don't
be
agree with some of her like
commander-in-chief with a
centrist
level of
issues,
respect.
it is very
And this
smart
gets
for her to be
back
playing
It's a
the
good
as
point of
centrist
how
as
he
she
has
is right now
consistently
because
disparaged
yeah,
and demeaned members of our
a bunch of metrics were estimating that
fallen
roughly 2/3 of
soldiers,
the
and
U.S.
work
is
that
watching
we must
tonight.
do to uphold
2/3 of the US is
strength
watching this
and the
tonight? That's
respect
crazy.
of the United States of America
4 of
around the
them are through
world.
us.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the
Yeah,
negotiations with
thank
the
you.
Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was
They have to
killing
talk about climate
our
change.
soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers.
Really?
And I
They
got
talked- didn't they
involved
talk about
with
it
the
with Biden?
Taliban because the
Yeah.
Taliban was
They
doing the
have to bring
killing.
it
That's
up.
the fighting force within Afghanistan. They
Which
don't
is
bother
exactly
doing that
what we
because
cover
they deal
every
with the wrong
single
people all the
time we
time.
go live,
But
or we
I got
stream
involved,
Screen Energy.
and Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He
That's
is
also
still
like
the
the
head
most
of the
related one
Taliban.
to our
And I told
area.
Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul.
Yeah.
And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind.
That's
And just to
completely
finish,
false. None of it was new
they
equipment.
blew
Most of it was like
the agreement
10
said
to
you
20
have
years
to
out
do
of date.
this, and they didn't
That's
do
crazy.
it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I wanna move
and
on.
these
Yeah, thank
people
you.
did the
I wanna move
worst
on. Me too.
withdrawal.
That's what I was
and
saying
in my
before we
opinion, the
even
most
started.
embarrassing moment in the
I wanna
history of our
move on.
country.
He
And
dropped
by the
his
way,
not
that's
care.
why Russia attacked Ukraine, because
this
they
is
saw how
even for his
incompetent
base. There's
she
no way this
and
looks
her
good.
boss are.
'Cause
No, this
they
is-
President Trump,
want
thank
to.
you.
They're trying to do a
I want to
debate.
move on
and
now to
broke-
race and politics in this country.
give it
Mr.
up.
President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe
Like
it's
half of his
appropriate to
campaign
weigh in
strategy
on the
or
racial
his
identity
debate
of
strategy
your
was to
opponent?
not
And I
bring
don't
this
care.
up.
I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay
Seemed
with
to
me.
care on that
those were your words.
black
I don't
journalist
I
panel.
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put
It's
out.
like when you like
And
when Grandpa says
I'll say
something
that,
racist at the
and
dinner
then
table and you
I read
confront him
that
and
she
he's
was
like,
black,
well,
and that's okay. Either
Yeah.
one was okay with me. That's up to her.
Like, literally.
That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us
Bring
know
up the Central
that we have
Park
so much
5.
more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he
Come on,
owned
come
land,
on.
he
Come
owned
on,
buildings,
Come on.
You're the
and
best one for
he was
you.
investigated
Park Five?
because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in
Yes,
the New
my
York
God.
Times calling for
Mama
the
love.
execution
Not
of
endorsing her.
5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page
talk about the
ad
Central Park
calling for
5.
their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
That was crazy.
And I think the
Obama made
American
fun of him
people
for it, which was awesome.
want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is
cooking him right now.
constantly
Yeah, this
trying
is
to
really
have
bad.
Americans point their fingers at each other.
This is every single
I meet with
minority
people all the
listening to us right now is,
time
like,
who
probably
tell
gonna
me,
be, like, way
can we
into this.
please just have discourse about
only people who
how
would
we're
disagree
going
is,
to
like,
invest in
racist
the
white, like-
aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those,
It's crazy
not in
how she
hate
just
and
said
division.
normal things.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump,
Yeah.
this is now
Normal
your
thing I've ever
third
heard in my
time.
life.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's
Oh
never
my
been anything like it.
God.
They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said.
Him of
Going
all
back
people
many,
calling
many
someone
years,
else
where a lot of
divisive
people,
is
including Mayor
insane.
Bloomberg agreed with me on the Central Park 5. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately.
That's not even like
And
a
if they pled
takedown.
guilty,
Like
then they
you
pled
cannot
not
deny,
guilty.
even as a supporter, how
But this
divisive
is a
he is. With,
person
like
that has to
this is
stretch
fact.
back
Positions he
years,
takes.
40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history
here he
of the
is. Remember
world,
what I said,
and I'm
guys.
going to build it again. It's
That's
going to
not
be
real.
bigger, better, and
No
stronger.
politician is
But they're
doing that.
destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their
Yeah, it's
oil
not great. Well, 'cause
policies,
he
every
realized he's
single
gonna- he
policy.
always-
And
he's
remember
done
this.
racist stuff like forever,
She
so
is
he's not gonna
Biden.
be able to, like,
You know, she's trying to get
defend
away from
himself.
Biden. I don't know the gentleman. She says, she is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your
This
time
is
is up.
I want to
actually
respond to that, though. I want to respond briefly.
briefly.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly
Also,
not
the
Donald
inflation
Trump.
had nothing to do with Biden.
And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we
Open
can
change,
do
question mark?
instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and
Oh, goodness.
and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue
God.
their
We're
ambitions,
on
their
the-
innovation, their ideas,
we're on
their
the
hard
fiscal
work. I have a
policy,
plan,
on the-
$6,000 for young
As soon as she
families for the
brought that
first year
shit
of your
up, I
child's
knew what was
life
gonna come out of
to
her
help
mouth.
you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the
Normal
American
people
dream
with 9 to
by
5s
offering
do not give a shit
help
about
with
startup
down payment
tax
of
credits.
$25,000
Most people
down
cannot start a
payment
business.
assistance
This is not
for
helping the
first-time
middle class.
home buyers. That's the
Or at
kind
least
of
the working
conversation
class.
I
This is
believe,
only
David,
helping the upper
that
middle
people
class
really
at
want
best.
tonight, as
It's
opposed
still
to a
good. I mean,
conversation
it's
that is
still good.
constantly
Well,
about
yeah, it's
belittling
I mean, but like,
and name
it
calling.
certainly is not
Let's
what we
turn
need.
the
the
page
child
Vice
care
President
in terms of
Harris,
fiscal
thank you. Let's
policy.
turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
to
we
Yeah.
have to move on.
The
President
business
Trump,
one,
Let's
how
turn
many
to
people have
policy.
enough money to start up a small
To
business?
defund the police. She has a
Oh my God, he's
to
falling apart. He's
confiscate
talking to you when
everybody's
he's
gun.
muted.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on
to
to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking
God.
in Pennsylvania or anywhere
he's-
else.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is.
Yeah,
for
no,
until
he's
just
all
recently.
he's
I just
he's
think
spiraling
President
right
Trump-
now.
The
President
former
Trump-
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice
sad.
that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
going
just
to.
Well,
want
he
to
looks so
respond one time to
frustrated.
what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
See?
your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do
You were
it.
the
and we're
president
gonna
for 4
replace it.
years.
But
You had the chance
remember
to
this,
change it.
I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it.
I mean,
If they
neither
would have
party's
done that,
great
we
on
would have had a
healthcare.
much better plan
No.
than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it
But
rot and
why,
let it go
dude?
away.
Why?
I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and
I don't
make
even think
it
he
as
knows
good
where
as
he's
it can
going
be,
with his sentence
or do I
before
let
he
it
starts
rot?
it.
And I saved it. I did the right thing.
saved it. How?
But it's
Say
still
how you did
never
it.
going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now.
After 9 years,
We come up
Working
with
on
something.
it.
I would only change it
Get
if we come up
on
with
it.
something
on the
that's better and
chalkboard.
less expensive. And there
He
are
literally
concepts
he's
and
procrastinating the
options we
problem
have
away.
to do that. And you'll be
That was
hearing about it
awesome.
in the not too distant future.
That might have been my
Vice
favorite
President Harris,
moment.
in
That might have been my
2017, you
favorite
I have
supported
moment.
Bernie
concepts
Sanders'
of 'em.
proposal to do away with private
That's
insurance and create a
insane.
government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim
We've already
Walz and
been
I are
over
both
that.
gun
Oh my
owners. We're
God,
not
oh my
taking
God.
anybody's
You're
guns
feeding
away,
into
so
him,
stop
but-
with the continuous lying about this stuff.
You talk about healthcare.
As it relates to the Affordable
Yeah.
Care Act,
Yes, okay,
understand,
okay.
just look at the history to know where people stand.
Unnecessary
when Donald
tangent,
Trump
but
was president, 60
continue.
times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen
She didn't
the
say
Affordable
healthcare was a
Care
human
Act,
right. She
not
said
get rid
access.
of it.
Vice
Past is
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want
Very
to move to an
important
issue
distinction
that's
there.
important for a
She
lot
made a
of
mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump.
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait
I know, that's
6 months
so
for an operation
crazy.
that
Yeah,
you need
totally
to be
that
President Trump,
happens,
thank you. We have
famously.
another issue that we'd like to get to
Oh
that's
my
important
God.
for a number
Oh
of
my God.
Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President
There we
Trump, with
go.
regard to the environment,
here
you
we go,
say that we
guys.
have
Here we
to
go,
have
guys.
clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat.
Yes,
The
this
question
is
to
us,
you both
guys.
tonight
This is
is
Mission
what would
6
you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll
This is
start
a
with
very
you. 1
important
minute for you
answer.
each.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And
I don't care what
we
Trump
know is
said,
that it
just
is
please-
very real.
I mean,
You
that's
ask
good, but I wanna
anyone
hear what
who
she has
lives
to
in a
say.
state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up.
You can talk
You
about the
ask
hurricane
anybody
that's about
who
to
has
hit.
Yeah,
been
literally the hurricane that's hitting right
the
now.
victim of
This is
what
literally
that
us,
means in
guys.
terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we
Literally,
can
we
actually
face this.
deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs.
Do you think he's going to try and claim that he's more environmentally friendly, or he's going to double down on drill, baby, drill?
I don't know.
Who also know that part of
I don't know how
building
he's
a
gonna
clean
build
energy
this.
economy includes investing in
Yes.
American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable.
talking about
But we're not
anything.
going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they
yes,
can't
the
come
third
into
option.
our country
Don't answer.
because
Yeah,
they
I
will
forgot.
kill
You're talking about
United
tariffs
Auto
on
Workers
cars?
and any auto worker,
Sir, the
whether it's in
question was climate
Detroit or
change.
South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it between him and his son.
Dude, he
they
is
get all this money from
falling.
Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder,
terrible
why is he so
responses.
loyal to this one, that one?
He just sounds like
Ukraine,
he's
China?
complaining.
Why
He
is
doesn't even sound
why
like
did he
he's
get $3.5
answering the debate
million
questions.
from the mayor
He's
of Moscow's
screaming
wife?
right now.
Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from
That
both
was
of our
all we
candidates.
got
An
on
historic
climate
night.
He didn't
change.
mention climate change
Presidential
at
debate
all.
From Philadelphia back
That's
in a moment.
all we got on climate change. The like
The
society
most important, threat to humanity right now.
is we got
ABC
one thing
News
from
presidential
Harris
debate
saying
will
like, yeah, we're
continue
investing in
after
clean
this.
energy, and then Trump talks about tariffs on cars from Mexico. What is United States politics?
That was awesome.
Was that
That was
it?
so cool. No, there's one more.
Okay, that. Oh my god, that's terrible.
Yeah, that was.
Literally, we talked about fracking at least 8 times, but then when it comes to climate change, one of the most pressing issues for coastal community, the entire world, we're like, yeah, well, me and Biden did stuff, and then Trump's like, where am I? Oh my god. Well, I mean, so we've done that. Biden has actually been a very good candidate so far, and exclusively for climate action. He's done probably the most out of any president so far. Especially with
But
the Inflation Reduction.
more is
More is
obviously
needed.
necessary.
But I think the candidates speak for themselves there on which candidate, and we're not going to say who because it's up to you to decide, because we're not endorsing either one. But depending on the response you heard there, you should pick which one you think is going to be better for climate issues. Wow, what an amazing debate! We really need to start like doing like this on local levels. I want to start seeing local debates. I think that we should start like requiring like our police jury and like stuff to start running on policy.
Wouldn't that be cool?
How do we should try to do that. We should try to see if we can, because we can probably like meet with them. We should see how many we can interview for policy and stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I need to sign up for the health summit before it gets too late.
Yeah, I need to do that too.
So I don't forget. We need to get Dawn and Grace to do it.
Still got 11 days.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to do it before I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, come sign up and come to it. You can help with it. We'll get you a commissioner, a Micah Shield t-shirt. You can do the interviews with us. We'll get Demyrick in here too. You'll probably have some good questions too for him. These will be like environmental leaders. So we won't be like pressing them. Yeah, these are like the quote-unquote good guys. Yeah, I'm trying to do. Maybe you can do it from Baton Rouge. I'm gonna start like doing like 1 minute or like 5 minute interviews on campus. Like, just sitting on campus by themselves, they can sit down and just like talk to you about some stuff. You should do to it and be like, so did you know that like in Baton Rouge you're 5 times more likely to get cancer? Oh, okay, it's not like actual relevant things. Unfortunately, we're trying to do actual coverage. We're not trying to get clicks. We're not trying to get clicks. I feel like I couldn't live with myself if I was like trying to recover.
No, that's what I don't understand how like media pundits do it, like treating stuff this important like a means to make money.
Like it's good. Like it is. Like this stuff is entertaining content, but like when you tear it down, this is super important.
Now he's raw.
Like, unbelievable.
How hard is it to see it like this?
And I don't. That's my biggest complaint because they go up there and I hate how like
what we know, and then the
they
big
have to
question
like
still
almost
outstanding.
perform. It's
News
so
for the
stupid.
generation of now is
Yeah.
NBC.
It's because America has a extremely bad problem with like actual politics and electoral politics being almost divorced.
Of tonight's key moments. Our team will break it down.
It is literally
As we
like team
enter the
sports.
final
I think that's just part of
sprint to
American
Election Day, we'll
culture.
go back to the debate and closing statements.
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
This is like the NFL.
Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight 2 very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Wow. Goodness gracious. That was interesting.
Yeah.
That was very interesting.
I'm just glad it was not a derailment disaster, like horror fest like last time.
Yeah. All right. I think we should probably save any thoughts we have about it for the video. All right. Thanks for watching. Hope y'all had a fun time. Hope you learned a little bit. Yeah. See y'all later. We're gonna be recording a little analysis of it after this to go live tomorrow.